Let's go. Greg's got the news, Danny's got the flair. One talks the cloud, the other's out there. Servers spinning, bites keep grinning. Tech talk laughs, let's get this show winning. Cyberwise guys, we're cracking the code. Tech and chuckles on overload. Urge your dreams, cybersecurity schemes. It's the podcast you need, like coffee and memes.
Welcome to CyberWise Guys, where we break down the latest trends, threats, technologies in cybersecurity, helping you stay one step ahead and cyberwise. Today on CyberWise Guys, Greg, I want to cover the latest story that's running on the news now about OpenAI Hugging Face autonomous hack.
Yes.
I'm wondering, what is your take with what's going on there? And if you can share what we know happened so far.
Okay. So yeah, Danny, this is quite an interesting event that occurs. So now there is, I think some of this is still being reported, investigated, but we do know some things. We know that OpenAI admitted that its models went rogue during testing and so-called hacked Hugging Face. This is, I use those in loose terms. This is their words, not mine. And during an offensive capability benchmarking on Exploit Gym, the models ran a supposedly isolated environment and with safety refusals intentionally disabled. We know that. The agent got a package installer tool. It found a 0-day in it and then escaped its sandbox, and then it reached the internet. And then it autonomously targeted and compromised Hugging Face's production infrastructure. So it's hitting its benchmark goal. And so that really the chain was, there was this malicious data set, code execution, a Hugging Face data pipeline, there was privilege escalation, and then lateral movement within Hugging Face. So that's the quick and dirty of it all.
Okay. And I guess Hugging Face were able to detect and contain it?
Yes,
and
that's my understanding. Yeah, my understanding. And I think it's important to know, as this is reported on in the future, how they detected that, because I think here we're starting to look at all that's old is new again. I think now we're starting to look back at this defense in depth again. Identity and access, data loss prevention, detection of rogue actions, looking at response backed with AI, against AI. So I think there's a lot to look at here.
So, and obviously, this specific case is about OpenAI and Hugging Face, but I think there are like bigger question to ask here, and that what happens when AI agents begin optimizing the goals rather than just responding to the prompts that they're being given, which in turns raised some concerns around security controls, the sandbox boundary, internet restrictions, and so forth.
And I think the key here too is looking at, it's no longer just controls on the models. Before we talked about, hey, we need to have a responsibility model on our LLM. But really the focus now becomes agent controls. What are the guardrails against agent behavior? And how do we then bring that into a traditional security protection, defense in depth situation?
And what I would ask is, what can be done today when someone's develop an agent to help them do a mundane work? How do we make sure that agent is restricted not just by the organization to reach out to certain databases, but what are we doing today, or what an organization doing today when they give permissions to employees to build up agents, to make sure that that person that creates the agent is actually aware of the capabilities and restrict the prompts of that agent in such a way that it doesn't go out of those boundaries that the organization set.
Correct. So, Danny, I think key here is looking at what we're already doing, and then talking about how do we then apply new security controls. So let's look at things like governed identity, permission, data access, its behavior, its runtime, not just on the model, but on the agent itself. Okay, so I mean, starting again with who can access data, going back to that zero trust. Now, what do we need in this new agentic era? Well, we're going to need better AI governance for agent identity. We're going to need observability. We're going to need data protection that looks specifically at things like what agents are able to access. So do they have their own specific permission set. What are they doing, and how do we govern that and observe that? And I think that observability tool is going to be key, putting humans in the loop again to it. So I think this goes back to having more robust defense in depth angles. So every company is trying to get a hang of providing security and governance for AI agents. Microsoft is trying it. I would imagine all the biggies are trying to get a hold of what AI is, and all of their approaches, regardless of if you start with identity or you start with network controls, they all are relying on the fact that there is this defense in depth in place to protect against this. But let's be honest here. What's the bottom line? Really, the bottom line is this is a brand new technology, and the defenses against it, rogue services like this and agents like this are still being developed. It's such a fast-moving target, quickly moving target. It's hard to get something out, because once you get some kind of a governance tool out there, some observability tool, it's changed already. So this is probably the most unique service, the unique tool that has ever occurred when it comes to information technology. It's changing so fast that trying to build defenses against it is very difficult to stay on top of everything, because it seems like it's changing not just daily but hourly. It's moving so fast.
So the biggest concern I have now in the AI market overall is the ethics of this and the lack of accountability on both ends, both the attacking side and the defensive side. And I would expect, obviously, OpenAI were very open about it and said, okay, this is what happened. This is how we mitigate the situation. But in other cases that we probably never going to hear about or going to hear about after the case, I think there needs to be some sort of an accountability both on the attacking and on the defensive side on who is responsible for creating this. Is it the organization CISO? Is it the CIO? On both ends, maybe it's the CEO, because I think that piece is the most important question. Who is accountable? Once you have said an accountability in that process, you start from the basic. You have an incident response process. You know who is accountable, who is supposed to do what, and who is communicating what to whom. And if that's going to be the first step, I think organizations are going to be much more protected, whether they are the one doing the hacking or they are the one being hacked.
And that's key here. Who is responsible when something like this happens? Who is accountable for when something like this happens? And you and I are no legal expert, but I can tell you that the responsibility and the accountability can be a bit murky at times. I mean, when you start crossing boundaries, you're talking about networking. Is it the responsibility of OpenAI because they own the agent? Is it someone in there specifically, someone that owns that agent specifically? Is it the failure of whatever code set they were using? That they should have known that there was a 0-day. Or maybe the defense tools at Hugging Face. They are an AI company. You would expect that they would have, robust system, and maybe they did, maybe they don't. I mean, when it comes to accountability, it's not always so clear. But Danny, I can tell you there are a number of things that I've heard in the field about what customers are looking for, what companies are looking for. They're looking for agent identity, this non-human identity that's not a human identity. It's not just a service principal, but we're talking about a specific, unique agent identity. They're looking for privilege boundaries, network segmentation, tool governance. So the tools that these agents are using. Again, you can start hearing that some of this sounds like we've already been dealing with zero trust.
Yeah.
They're looking for DLP solutions, looking for runtime monitoring, human approval. That's a key one there too. So if there had been a human approval crossing boundaries in this loop, would it have been different? Prompt injection protection. Maybe not in this case, but in other cases too that I've heard. And also things like you were talking about, behavioral guardrails that cannot be switched off. And the one that I hear quite often is a kill switch. When it is detected, is there a kill switch we can flip to stop that agent in its tracks?
I like that point. And the question is, if an agent is smart enough to be able to autonomously go outside of the sandbox, it might be able to circumvent the kill switch. So
depends on the nature.
But I want to throw something at you and maybe take it to the next step. An agent should never have more permission than a human performing the same task.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say to say those things in for all absolute cases. I'm sure there's some edge cases where that may be the case, but I think more times than not, that's true.
Yeah, because as someone who's deeply familiar with Microsoft, and I want to maybe dive into, you've mentioned the big boys, and I'm going to use
Huh?
Microsoft as an example. And you've mentioned identities. So what I like about Microsoft's Entra Suite, right? It helps ensure the verification of the identity. It puts together conditional access and least privilege, and it's got the PIM solution there embedded in the suite. So how are those solutions that are in the suite, in the Entra suite, really help customers be ready for something like this?
So Microsoft's approach is to look at this first as an identity issue. So to control agents within the environment, let's have it as a separate identity, just like I mentioned here. And then you can layer on top of that all the Entra policies, conditional access, purview, the agent governance, the visibility, lifecycle policy. They do all that through their Entra agent ID. So
Yeah.
and not only that, but then you layer on top of that on the Microsoft side, the Agent 365, which then gives you lifecycle management. It allows you to look for risk. So all of these things come together it's really on top of identity. So you're getting everything like on the Microsoft approach that you're just layering the security on top of what is now the agent identity itself.
Mm-hmm.
So is that the only way to look at protecting your environment from agents? No, I mean there are other the big providers out there that will look at agent access and identity or not identity, agent behavior from the network level. It'll look at it from various other levels that they'll try to bring in to control agents. But I think I'm most familiar with how Microsoft's identity is really being the one where you are controlling it
Okay.
from that specific aspect.
So here's a question for you on the Microsoft. I'm on the TD Synnex side. I want to bring in a point for our channel partners who are not just resellers, but actually providing services, and many of them are
Yeah.
managed security service providers, and providing that layer of security for those organizations that help those who cannot help themselves, defend those who cannot defend themselves, which probably is going to be more relevant. So when you're a channel partner, MSSP, for example, and you
Yes.
have a number of customers, would having a SIM solution be helpful in this case? And if so, how?
Seems to do a really great job at bringing all of the security alerts and incidents and behaviors that are across your security environment from all of your tools, Entra, Purview, Defender, into one spot to correlate that behavior to find large security attacks. So, for example, if I'm trying to drop malware in, and at the same time I'm trying to brute force an identity, I can bring that all in together and say, oh, we have a multi-stage attack going on, things like that. How does a SIM help manage an MSSP?
Mm-hmm.
Well, again, what's the alternative? If you don't use a SIEM, then you have to correlate this by hand. Defender does great for detection investigation, but what about identity and access? So if I have a subtle attack that Entra picks up and then it then provides alerts within its own tenant or within its own service, there's not going to be any correlation between the two unless I have some SIEM. And that's just saying if I'm just strictly Microsoft. Well, again, if I have other sources out there, if I'm on-prem, Google, AWS, you name it, how do I correlate all that by hand? So a SIEM is going to make that so much easier. And SIEMs also tend to be where you're going to trigger your SOAR functions. So your orchestration, your automation and orchestration response. That's also the object of your response in real time. It's going to be at that point. So those who don't have a SIEM are relying specifically on just humans on human time trying to conduct detection, investigation, and triage. They're going to be a significant disadvantage to the attacker and to others in the environment, to their peers.
Let's say if they have a Microsoft Sentinel and they combine it together with Security Copilot, I think it would help them tremendously, not just identifying, but analyzing and correlate those alerts that are coming in.
Yes. Not only that, Danny, but we can also start looking at remediation. So if Security Copilot cannot tell us what happened and why it happened, but they can make suggestions to say you can increase your policy or change your policies to reflect where an improvement here. And if you have vulnerabilities that are based on you have not flipped the proper switches or your configurations are not optimal, it can also tell you that as well. And not only that, if you have, it allows you to do things like first level script analysis. I mean, there are many scripts that are run in an IT environment that are completely benign. I mean, if you want to do something as an admin, you're not going to do it one by one through the portal. You're going to write a PowerShell script, and you're going to have that whatever it is done by using automation. So many of those are just completely benign, but you don't know that when you're looking at an incident. So you can look to see, hey, is a script I'm having here, what does it do? And then it can better help me. Not only that, if you combine it with other services, like it's looking for attack paths, it can also show you an attack path. So it really is harnessing the power of AI and the speed of AI across your entire defense network.
You've mentioned zero trust, which really goes down to assume compromise and trust nothing and verify everything. I think that organizations that are concerned about autonomous AI attacks should also look at, when it comes to agent at least privileges. Provide only necessary permissions, give access to necessary data and necessary tools. Always keep a human in the loop for high impact actions specifically. And you've mentioned something earlier that I don't think we dived too much into this, but agent governance.
Yes.
Making sure that organization need inventory of the AI agents and their identities. What kind of permissions and who provided access to those agents to access the data and tools and so forth.
Who owns the agent? Like you brought up earlier, who owns that agent? And is it an orphan agent within the environment?
Do you have any visibility as a Microsoft expert as to how Microsoft appears to be avoiding similar risks and not be the next OpenAI to openly admit something like this happened?
Well, that's a difficult one, Danny, because again, we're talking about a 0 day. So no company can make a claim against all 0 days. So I think, would Microsoft or any company been able to stop this particular 0 day? Not likely.
Not likely. Okay.
Yeah. Look at the nature of the 0 day itself. No. Would it have been able to stop the escape into the internet? Perhaps. If Microsoft's egress and allow lists were parameterized correctly, yes. What about disabling guard rules or attacking an outside company? Probably not. Probably not. So, but is there something within the Microsoft environment that can help manage these agents? So, what can help reduce this risk or the blast radius of this? Well, I think there are two things. One is going to be their Agent 365 for the governance side, and two is going to be their Entra Agent ID. And again, these are addressing agentic systems. But I think where the defense comes in, where the meat of the defense comes in, is really layering that defense. So for Microsoft, it's going to be all those protections in Entra. So again, agent identity and access, just like you said. What access are we giving and what are we allowing? Purview. So that data, that DLP, that insider risk, all of those are applied to an agent behavior. A defender, detection investigation. Again, you're still looking at that entity, detecting that. And agent governance, just like the Agent 365 side. So do we have visibility on what's our environment? Are we managing life cycles? Or do we have the proper policies applied? And are we managing risk? So when they say life cycle, it's, do we have a bunch of stagnant, stale agents that are sitting there? Because an agent is sitting there, nobody's watching and nobody's looking at, is ripe for manipulation. So how are we moving agents in? How are we managing them? And how are we moving them out? So, and then combine that, of course, with where all of Microsoft is going with this. Again, some of the things I mentioned, privilege boundaries, kill switches, prompt injection protections, all of those are coming down the line. But overall, looking at this objectively, Danny, I think this approach with Microsoft looking at agents in the environment through identity is probably the best approach I've seen so far. Again, every company is falling short here because it's such a quickly developing threat, and by its nature, it's unique because the threat develops itself in some cases.
Yeah.
So how you keep up with that?
Yeah. And well, I guess the only way to keep up with it is to make sure that you are following best practices. Agents are working faster than
Yes.
we've ever seen before.
Yes.
But to reduce the risk, I think any organization, and we talk to the channel partners, we talk to customers about it, any organizations that is asking, keep on following those. To reduce the risk, I think any organization should follow the steps that we've mentioned earlier, whether that's going to be zero trust, for example, making sure that you provide less privileges and so forth, and have an IR plan in play when something
Yes.
happens, as you know how to act and you know how to act swiftly. I think that is the key.
Exactly, Danny. And that's the thing too, is that if you're not practicing your IR response, you should at least quarterly, I mean, I would say monthly, but quarterly, you should be doing a tabletop. Okay, we have, especially if you're AI heavy, we have an agent that has gone rogue and accessed data and then exploited that data and exfilled it to some other source. What do we do? How do we contain that? How do we respond to it? So it's good to have a plan, but if you don't practice the plan and make that plan a part of your organization, then it's not worth the paper it's written on. So the key here is practicing those things as well. And that's just not for AI. That's any threat. You should be doing this quarterly anyways for all of your environment.
Mm-hmm. Well, truer words never spoken, I guess.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, well, I want to close this off by thank you. Obviously, it's always a pleasure to record those episodes. And want to thank our listeners for tuning into Cyber Wise Guys. And I'm going to ask you, do not forget to hit that subscribe button so you could get more updates
thumbs
and
up,
see more episodes.
Make a comment. If you don't like Danny's shirt, you should say something.
But until next time, stay vigilant, stay informed, and stay cyber wise.
Bye, everybody.